People want more freedom, more stability, more control over their future. But many people wake up every day and feel the same quiet frustration. They work hard, they stay busy, yet nothing really moves forward. Days turn into months, months turn into years. And one day they realize something uncomfortable. They were busy surviving but never truly building. The truth is simple. Most people don't lack talent. Most people don't lack effort. They lack time that truly belongs to them. But what if just 2 quiet hours every morning could slowly change the direction of a life? This is the story of a man named Frank. Frank was 36 years old. He lived in a busy industrial town where trucks moved through the streets from morning until night. Frank worked as a maintenance worker in a large cold storage warehouse. His job was simple but exhausting. Every day he checked machines, repaired broken equipment, carried tools across long concrete floors. The work started early and ended late. By the time Frank returned home, he had very little energy left. His apartment was small and quiet. A folding table, a narrow bed, a second-hand refrigerator that hummed loudly at night. Sometimes Frank would sit on the edge of his bed and stare at the wall, not because he was lazy, but because he felt stuck in a life that never seemed to move. Frank often had the same thought. Other people seem to move forward, so why am I standing still? He wasn't careless with money. He didn't waste time on dangerous habits. He simply followed the routine that most people follow. Work, eat, sleep, repeat, and slowly the years passed. One evening, Frank stopped by a small public library near his apartment. He wasn't looking for anything special. He just wanted a quiet place to sit for a few minutes before going home. Inside the library, there was an older man sitting near the window. He had a stack of notebooks beside him. He looked calm and focused. Frank noticed something unusual. The man seemed full of energy even though it was already late in the evening. Curious, Frank asked politely, "Do you come here every night?" The man smiled. "No," he said. "I come here every morning." Frank looked confused. "But the library only opens at 8. The man chuckled softly. "My real work happens long before that." The man introduced himself as Mr. Victor. He had spent many years running small businesses. Now he spent most of his time studying, reading, and advising younger people. Frank asked the question that came naturally. "What do you mean by your real work happens earlier, mister?" Victor leaned forward. "Tell me something," he said. "When does your day begin?" Frank thought for a moment. "Usually around 7:30. "And what happens then?" Frank shrugged. "I rush to work, mister." Victor nodded. "That is the same for almost everyone." Then he said something Frank would never forget. "The hours before the world wakes up are the most powerful hours of the day." Mr. Victor explained his idea in a very simple way. Every person receives 24 hours a day. But most of those hours are already owned by someone else. Employers, responsibilities, noise, interruption. But if you wake up earlier than the world, he said, you borrow time from the future. Frank frowned. "What do you mean? You create hours that belong only to you." Mr. Victor drew a simple timeline on a piece of paper. 5:00 a.m., 7:00 a.m. These 2 hours, he said, can become the foundation of a completely different life. Frank looked skeptical. 2 hours doesn't seem like much. Mr. Victor smiled. 2 hours every day becomes 700 hours in a year. Frank's eyes widened slightly. 700 hours. That was almost like adding months of extra time to a year. That night, Frank decided to try something different. Not forever, just as an experiment. He set his alarm for 5 in the morning. When the alarm rang, the room was still dark. His mind immediately began arguing with him. You need more sleep. You can start next week. But another voice inside him said something else. If nothing changes, nothing changes. So Frank got up, slowly. The first few mornings were uncomfortable. Frank sat at his small table with a cup of cheap coffee. At first, he didn't know what to do. So he opened his laptop and began watching lessons about basic computer skills and online work. The information was simple, but it opened a door he had never explored before. After studying for an hour, he would spend the second hour walking outside. The streets were empty. The city felt different before sunrise. Quieter, slower, almost peaceful. After 2 weeks, Frank noticed something surprising. He no longer felt rushed every morning. He felt ahead of the day instead of behind it. The morning hours had given him something he had not felt in years: control. One morning, Frank learned how to organize information using simple spreadsheet tools. He practiced with examples. Then, he had an idea. At work, the warehouse inventory was often disorganized. Workers wasted time searching for items. Frank decided to build a simple tracking system. Nothing complicated, just clear rows and columns. But it worked. When his supervisor saw the system, he was surprised. "Where did you learn this?" Frank answered honestly. Early mornings, the supervisor asked him to help organize more data. Within a few weeks, Frank became the person everyone asked when information needed to be sorted. 3 months after his first 5 o'clock morning, Frank's life had quietly shifted. He was still the same person, but he had new confidence, new skills, and something more important: momentum. The warehouse manager eventually offered him a new role, helping with operations planning. It paid more. It required less physical labor. But the biggest change was not the job. The biggest change was who Frank had become. Even after his promotion, Frank continued waking up early. Not because he had to, but because those hours had become his private workshop. Sometimes he studied new tools. Sometimes he read books. Sometimes he simply sat quietly and thought about his future. Those 2 hours had become the most valuable part of his day. Frank eventually understood something powerful. Most people search for big opportunities, but big opportunities often grow from small, repeated actions. A quiet decision, made again and again, morning after morning. Right now, someone somewhere is waking up early. While the world sleeps, they are learning something new, practicing, planning, building. A year from now, their life will look different, not because of luck, but because they used time that others ignored. Tonight you have a choice. You can let tomorrow look exactly like today, or you can try something different. Set your alarm for 5 in the morning. Protect 2 quiet hours. Use them to build something that belongs only to you: a skill, a project, a new path. Because the future rarely changes in loud, dramatic moments. It changes quietly in the early morning. And sometimes, all it takes to change the direction of a life is the courage to wake up before the world does.